Hello everyone, and welcome to my BJDs for Newbies video series, where I break down the basics of ball-jointed dolls and the hobby overall for new collectors. Today I'm going to be covering one of the most divisive topics in the BJD community, recast dolls. So the too long didn't watch laydown is this. Recast is simply a slang term in the BJD community for counterfeit dolls. That's it. They're illegally reproduced dolls, bootlegs, knockoffs, fakes, whatever other term you can think of that applies. So what goes into the counterfeiting process? Well, first, the counterfeiter will take their time to research what sculpts are currently highly sought after in the market. Next, they have to get a hold of the original doll or dolls in question. Some buy straight from the original company, some may buy secondhand dolls, and others may manage to get a hold of the original company's molds. Even some counterfeit collectors have made claims of sending counterfeiters their own legitimate dolls to use, though I have no way of knowing if these people actually went through with those plans or not. Once the counterfeiter gets a hold of a legitimate version of the doll they want to make copies of, they then create their own molds using that doll's parts so they can go on to make more copies, or recasts. After that, they sell what they recasted at, usually half or less the cost of the original doll. Wait, so why are they so much cheaper? Well, the most obvious money saver is that the counterfeiter never had to put the man-hours into designing the doll itself. They just have to pick out an already finished doll and go to town. And because they usually make copies of already popular dolls, they don't have to drop quite as much money in advertising as the legit company would. On top of that, most of the counterfeiters base their operations in China, where costs for everything they need to keep business going is cheaper than other places in the world, particularly compared to South Korea and Japan, where a good chunk of BJDs are made. Even legit doll companies based in China tend to have dolls that are less expensive than their Korean and Japanese counterparts because of this. And then you have to consider that this is an illegal business they're running. It would not at all be surprising if there are a lot of corners being cut behind the scenes. You only need to look at the counterfeiting world as a whole to get an idea of just how horrid the business can get. What's the quality like? From what I've garnered from counterfeit owners that have shared their experiences publicly, it can be hit or miss. Sometimes you'll receive a doll that looks as good as the original, sometimes you'll get one that's wonky in some way, like the parts don't match up or fit together properly. One thing that will just about always be true for counterfeit dolls, though, is that there will be some amount of shrinkage with them. Sometimes it's minimal and hardly noticeable, other times it can be pretty obvious. This can lead to parts being more susceptible to damage due to strain, since the resin can end up so much thinner than it was originally intended to be. Smaller details like wrinkles or nail detailing and so on can also end up fading during the recasting process, depending on if the counterfeiter just uses their own recast to create new molds when needed. It's pretty much like when you make a photocopy from a photocopy. The details on the page end up getting degraded. Also, from what I've seen in comparison pictures, the insides of recasted dolls aren't always as clean as their legitimate counterparts. The quality of the resin itself is up in the air. Some say it's just as good as resin parts from the legit doll makers. Others say that they notice incredibly strong and noxious odors coming from their dolls, even after letting them air out. What's the downside of buying counterfeits? So yeah, I just told you that you can find a BJD for ridiculously low prices. Comparatively speaking anyway, they're still expensive. That can end up being just as good as the more expensive legitimate doll. Chances are, even with a hefty respect for the work that goes into making these dolls, that's a pretty tempting thing to want to seek out. Hell, I've found those prices tempting, and I consider myself pretty far into the anti-counterfeit territory. So what's stopping me? In short, personal ethics, empathy for the people that create these dolls I enjoy so much, and respect for the work they do. The dolls that I love and appreciate seeing so much would not exist if not for the people that originally created them. And I'd like to see more work from the original creators, so they're the ones that get my money, not someone that can only make a billion copies of the current hottest thing. That's me though. What's the downside for you if these are things you don't care about? Or at the very least, you care about these things less than getting an expensive toy for cheap? Well, social-wise, you may likely end up screwing yourself out of a lot. While there is a growing number of counterfeit collectors in the BJD community, known as pro recasters or recast friendlies, it's still pretty small peanuts compared to the community as a whole. A large chunk of hobbyists, to put it incredibly lightly, are not fans of counterfeit dolls, or even the people that actively collect them. Many want nothing to do with counterfeits or their owners. They don't want to see them, don't want to hear about them, don't want to talk about them. Which is within their right, since this particular topic can cause a lot of stress on both sides. so most choose avoidance to keep that stress out of their corner of the hobby when they have the choice. That said, there are a couple of people that are against the purchasing of counterfeits, but are still willing to make friends with people that purchase them. These people seem like they might be slightly in the minority though, from what I've personally seen online. Your experience may vary. On top of this, there are also a number of forums, Facebook groups, Discord servers, meetup groups, doll conventions, and so on that are legit only spaces, meaning you can get kicked out if you share your counterfeit doll at these places. And this isn't even getting into face-up artists and other people that can be commissioned to do specific projects for you that won't work on recast dolls. But if these are things you also don't care about, then yeah, downsides are currently pretty minimal if fakes are what you're planning to buy. What if you do care? What can you do to avoid ending up with a counterfeit by mistake? Number 1. Don't let family or friends buy you a doll without your supervision. As well-intentioned as our loved ones are, they're the most likely to end up buying a fake without even knowing it. If you explain to them that you'd be worried about them accidentally buying a counterfeit, I'm sure they'd understand. If worse comes to worse, just tell them to give you cash. Number 2. If the price looks too good to be true for a brand new doll, it probably is. This isn't to say that great legit deals don't come up. Sometimes doll companies close down and they sell stuff on clearance, or they're selling off display pieces that are discolored or damaged in some way. Hell, I've gotten a lmao mono with a face-up and tan skin for less than a blank version of the same doll thanks to a Black Friday sale a dollar dealer was running. Context is key. Be sure to read up on whoever runs the listing you're looking at and ask around if you're not sure. Number 3. Unless you are 100% certain that doll on places like eBay, Amazon, AliExpress, Wish, Taobao, and so on and so forth is from a legitimate source, don't bother. Plenty of legit doll companies use places like eBay and Taobao to sell their products, but there's also plenty of scammers and counterfeiters doing the same. Do your research before purchasing. Number 4. Ask around if you're not sure. There are BJD hobbyists on a number of social media sites, and the popular BJD forum Den of Angels has an entire sub-forum just for people to ask about stuff like this called Newbie Land. Most of us are more than happy to answer your questions, so please don't feel afraid to ask them. If someone tells you to just Google it, ask someone else. Number 5. Avoid these two sellers like the plague. While there are, unfortunately, a number of counterfeiters making these dolls, bjd-shop and Oueneifs are the most likely to be stumbled upon during even really simple searches regarding ball-jointed dolls. If you feel a listing not posted by these two particular recasters might be iffy, a Google search may likely get you a quick answer. But again, ask if you want to be positive. Overall, I'm pretty much just saying to use your good judgment and do your research. What do I do if I end up with a counterfeit doll by mistake? If you do end up with a counterfeit and aren't happy about it, there's a few things you can do. If you purchase the doll in question off of a site like eBay and the like, you can possibly report that you were sold a counterfeit item and go through the process to try and get your money back. If you purchase the doll straight from a counterfeiter, you might be able to return it and get a refund. If you really want to, you can destroy the doll. It's your property and your money spent. You can do what you wish with it. Or you can keep it. The damage has already been done, and sometimes it can just cost you more to go about getting a refund. Just be sure to be honest and forthcoming about the situation with this particular doll. If you try to hide its origins and people find out on their own, your reputation can potentially take a pretty heavy hit. You can also sell it to a counterfeit collector. As mentioned before, the damage has already been done, and this can be a potentially less finicky way to at least get most of your money back. Again, be sure to be forthcoming about the fact that the doll is a fake. This and keeping the doll are also options for if you were knowingly purchasing counterfeit dolls and want to go legit. As long as you're honest with what's going on, most people will be willing to give you a benefit of the doubt. And that about covers everything I wanted to talk about regarding recast BJDs. If you have any questions or feedback, leave a comment below. Please note though that comments for this particular video will be under moderation. If I feel your comment is made just to stir things up, I will not allow for it to be posted in the comment section. If you want to have a debate or straight up argument, take it somewhere else. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. That said, there are a couple of people that are against the purchasing of